What's up, guys? This is Chris from DraftDashboard.com. Here are my DFS picks for NBA Saturday, November 20th. These picks apply for DraftKings and FanDuel. Before I get started, please drop a like on this video and hit that red subscribe button and hit that bell icon so you don't miss our new videos. In this video, I'm going to go over my top picks for today's NBA slate. And if you stick around to the very end of this video, we'll use the Draft Dashboard tools to make a DFS lineup using the picks we just made. Okay guys, we have an 8-game slate tonight, so let's take a look at the point guard position. Now just real quick, we had some monster hits yesterday, but also a couple of monster flops. I didn't realize, I knew LeBron James was coming back, but they said that Horton Tucker was going to get enough minutes where he should still be valuable as a DFS player. He was super low ownership, thought it was going to be a good risk-reward play, but it did not turn out to be the case, so that was a big flop. But a lot of those other picks smashed value, so that's what I want to do here, give you these under-the-radar picks to help you crush value so you can get those studs in there and get yourself a winning lineup. So let's take a look at the point guard position. I like Marcus Smart from the Boston Celtics playing the Oklahoma City Thunder, who have the 5th worst defense overall, and they're middle of the pack defending opposing point guards. Marcus Smart has averaged 28.2 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 35 minutes per game with a 15% usage rate. He's projected at 28.4 fantasy points here tonight, and that's 5.6 times value. He's only $5,100 DraftKings salary. He's $1,100 more on FanDuel, so I love that DraftKings price. Vegas thinks there's going to be 206 points scored in this game, and Marcus Smart has scored 43, 31, and 30 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 30, 35, and 36 minutes. So even though it is a back-to-back, Marcus Smart only played 30 minutes last game, so I think he should be good to go for tonight. So I like Marcus Smart here versus the Oklahoma City Thunder. Now, even though Patrick Beverley's salary is creeping up just a little bit, I think he's still a pretty decent play at $4,700 DraftKings salary, 100 more on FanDuel. He's projected at 25.5 fantasy points here tonight. That's 5.4 times value. He scored 29, 39, and 21 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 28, 34, and 33 minutes. So I like Patrick Beverley here versus the Memphis Grizzlies. I also like Mike Conley from the Utah Jazz playing the Sacramento Kings, who have the 6th worst defense overall. They give up the 5th most fantasy points to opposing point guards. Mike Conley has averaged 27.8 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 28 minutes per game with a 19% usage rate. He's projected at 27.3 fantasy points here tonight, but I think he can score 30 fantasy points or more in this one, get you 5 times value or more. He's $5,800 DraftKings salary and 100 less on FanDuel. Vegas thinks there's going to be 223.5 points scored in this game, and I like this pick because Mike Conley has scored 40, 30, 39, and 43 fantasy points in his last 4 games versus the Kings. And I think his ownership might be low because really hasn't played all that well the past 5 games, only scoring 22, 27, 20, 25, and 27 fantasy points. But he's out there, he's getting plenty of minutes. So I do think this is going to be a good risk to reward play here. His salary is pretty low. He's got 30 plus fantasy point upside, and he's got fantastic player versus team history in a high scoring game and a great matchup. So I like Mike Conley here versus the Sacramento Kings. Okay guys, it's time to announce the winner of our $25 PayPal giveaway. So the winner is Harrison Edgar. Congratulations, Harrison Edgar. You are the winner of our $25 weekly PayPal giveaway. Please reply to our comment to collect your prize. Before I continue with the picks, I'm excited today because we added a new contest for everyone watching. If you want to enter the drawing for $25 PayPal, all you need to do is like this video, hit that subscribe button, and make a quick comment below to be entered into the drawing. We'll reply to a random comment and let you know that you won, and we'll send you $25 PayPal. So it's that easy, and we pick a new winner every Saturday and announce them in our video. So get your comment in now so I can add another entry for you. Okay, let's take a look at the shooting guard position. I like Kelly Oubre Jr. from the Charlotte Hornets playing the Atlanta Hawks, who have the 11th worst defense overall. They're middle of the pack defending opposing shooting guards. Kelly Oubre Jr. has averaged 23.6 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 26 minutes per game with a 22% usage rate. He's projected at 23.4 fantasy points here tonight, and that's 5.3 times value. He's 4,400 DraftKings salary, 800 more on FanDuel. Vegas thinks there's going to be 226 points scored in this game, and Kelly Oubre Jr. has scored 22, 27, and 18 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 30, 23, and 15 minutes. So I am looking for Kelly Oubre Jr. to get close to 30 minutes in this game, and he scored 49, 31, 18, 47, and 23 fantasy points in his last 5 games versus the Hawks. So I think this is a decent high-risk, high-reward value play. So I like Kelly Oubre Jr. here versus the Atlanta Hawks. Okay, now here's a value play for you. I like Cam Reddish from the Atlanta Hawks playing the Charlotte Hornets, who have the 2nd worst defense overall. They give up the 6th most fantasy points to opposing shooting guards. Cam Reddish has averaged 19.4 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 23 minutes per game with a 23% usage rate. He's projected at 19.8 fantasy points here tonight, and that's 6.2 times value. He's only 3,200 DraftKings salary. He's 1,400 more on FanDuel. So I love that DraftKings price. Vegas thinks there's going to be 226 points scored in this game. And Cam Reddish has scored 31, 18, and 13 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 26, 25, and 16 minutes. So I like that he scored 31 fantasy points last game in 26 minutes with a 28% usage rate. I think this guy's got some pretty big upside on DraftKings at only 3,200 DraftKings salary. If he scores 25 fantasy points or more, he is going to absolutely smash value here, and it's a great matchup. So I like Cam Reddish here versus the Charlotte Hornets. Okay, let's take a look at the small forward position. I like Anthony Edwards from the Minnesota Timberwolves playing the Memphis Grizzlies, who have the 2nd worst defense overall. They give up the 8th most fantasy points to opposing small forwards. Anthony Edwards has averaged 39.7 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 36 minutes per game with a 29% usage rate. He's projected at 39.5 fantasy points here tonight. That's 4.9 times value. He's 800 DraftKings salary, 100 more on FanDuel. Vegas thinks there's going to be 218.5 points scored in this game. And Anthony Edwards has scored 36, 37, and 39 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 33, 39, and 39 minutes. So, great matchup. It's a fast-paced game. And Anthony Edwards has scored 44, 67, and 40 fantasy points in his last 3 games versus the Grizzlies. So I like Anthony Edwards here versus the Memphis Grizzlies. Real quick, guys, I got great news. For a limited time, we're offering a full 30-day trial to Draft Dashboard. You can try all of our DFS tools for all sports. You can try the Position Optimizer, where you can see the top players ranked for each position. And we added a new Player Trends tool, where you can see the top salary differences between FanDuel and DraftKings. It's a really good tool to help you pick out value for the site that you're playing on. Oh, and if you're tired of doing research every day, we just added a cheat sheet that shows hand-picked plays for the slate. No confusing stat lines, no headaches, just a simple cheat sheet that shows the absolute best players for your lineups.
Another small forward that I like is Franz Wagner. He smashed it for us yesterday. I think he's a good play again here tonight. Franz Wagner from the Orlando Magic playing the Milwaukee Bucks, who have a middle-of-the-pack defense overall. They've been pretty good versus opposing small forwards, but Franz Wagner has averaged 25.9 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 32 minutes per game with a 19% usage rate. He's projected at 26.2 fantasy points here tonight, and that's 6.1 times value. He's 4,300 DraftKings salary, 800 more on FanDuel. Vegas thinks there's going to be 213 points scored in this game, and Franz Wagner has scored 32, 28, and 33 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 28, 33, and 35 minutes. So I like Franz Wagner here versus the Milwaukee Bucks. Okay, let's take a look at the power forward position. I like John Collins from the Atlanta Hawks playing the Charlotte Hornets, who have the second worst defense overall. They give up the 4th most fantasy points to opposing power forwards. John Collins has averaged 34.5 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 32 minutes per game with a 20% usage rate. He's projected at 35.8 fantasy points here tonight. That's 5.1 times value. He's 7,000 DraftKings salary, 100 more on FanDuel. Vegas thinks there's going to be 226 points scored in this game, and John Collins has scored 43, 39, and 30 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 34, 31, and 31 minutes. So this is a great matchup for John Collins, who has scored 29, 41, and 46 fantasy points in his last 3 games versus the Hornets. So I like John Collins here versus the Charlotte Hornets. Okay, now here's a high-risk, high-reward value play. I think he's a great play on DraftKings. I like Larry Nance Jr. from the Portland Trailblazers playing the Philadelphia 76ers, who have a middle-of-the-pack defense overall, and they give up the 7th most fantasy points to opposing power forwards. Larry Nance Jr. has averaged 17.6 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 19 minutes per game with a 15% usage rate. He's projected at 19.6 fantasy points here tonight. That's 6.1 times value. He's only 3,200 DraftKings salary. He's 1,200 more on FanDuel. Vegas thinks there's going to be 217.5 points scored in this game. And Larry Nance Jr. has scored 40, 24, and 13 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 24, 23, and 20 minutes. So I like to see that his minutes have been increasing for the last 3 games. So has his production. It's a good matchup. His salary is super low on DraftKings. So I like Larry Nance Jr. here versus the Philadelphia 76ers. Okay, moving on to the center position. I like Karl Anthony Towns from the Minnesota Timberwolves playing the Memphis Grizzlies, who have the 2nd worst defense overall. They give up the 5th most fantasy points to opposing centers. Karl Anthony Towns has averaged 46.1 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 35 minutes per game with a 26% usage rate. He's projected at 46.1 fantasy points here tonight, but I think he can score 50 fantasy points or more, get you 5 times value or more. He's 10,100 DraftKings salary and 200 less on FanDuel. Vegas thinks there's going to be 218.5 points scored in this game, and Karl Anthony Towns has scored 52, 37, and 57 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 38, 36, and 40 minutes. So he's been playing monster minutes, and he scored 52, 36, 59, and 53 fantasy points in his last 4 games versus the Grizzlies. It's a great matchup, so I like Karl Anthony Towns here versus the Memphis Grizzlies. Now, I also like Rudy Gobert from the Utah Jazz playing the Sacramento Kings, who have the 6th worst defense overall. They give up the 2nd most fantasy points to opposing centers. Rudy Gobert has averaged 41.1 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 31 minutes per game with a 17% usage rate. He's projected at 40.4 fantasy points here tonight. That's 5.1 times value. He's $7,900 DraftKings salary, $400 more on FanDuel. Vegas thinks there's going to be 223.5 points scored in this game. So you got a high-scoring game, a great matchup, and Rudy Gobert has scored 34, 47, and 37 fantasy points in his last 3 games, playing 29, 28, and 34 minutes. But take a look at his last 3 games versus the Kings. He scored 49, 49, and 40 fantasy points, and 38 fantasy points the game before that. So quality production the past 4 games versus the Kings. So I like Rudy Gobert here versus the Sacramento Kings.
If you want to try all these daily fantasy tools for yourself, click the link in the description below this video or just go to draftdashboard.com. You can use our DFS lineup optimizer to build quality lineups using our picks and your own custom player pool. Click the link in the description below this video and try all these daily fantasy tools right now. Thanks so much for watching. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel and hit that bell icon so you can get instant updates whenever we post a new video. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, please smickety smash that like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Oh, and please comment below with your favorite player for this NBA slate. I love to hear what you guys have to think. Thanks again, and good luck.